my talk. Here we go. How he said he living life as a gringo, where you question where you fit and every time you mingle. They say you do this with not enough that. My rapping is really bad. This life as a gringo.
Yes, hello and welcome to another episode of Life as a Gringo. I am Dramos, of course, and man, it is a beautiful, beautiful week. We are here on Halloween. This month has fucking flown by, which is insane. This year has completely flown by. It feels like we are literally just a couple months away from the end of it. I can't believe even saying that, like, New Year's is right around the corner. This is that time of year where, like, once Halloween hits, it's like boom, the rest of the year just flies by, and we're all just, at least personally, I feel like I'm just hanging on for the ride right now, and I'm coasting until the new year, I think, which I hate to say, but feels like that's what my body's telling me, and who am I to argue with it? Now, with that said, I'm really excited about today's show. Actually, first and foremost, before we even get into today's show, I want to make sure, top of show here, that if you didn't already know, I have a second podcast called The Street Stoic, and it is a short, like 15-minute daily podcast, Monday through Friday. It is a combination of inspirational hip-hop lyrics and quotes with ancient Stoic philosophy meant to inspire you to get your day started, to teach you life lessons. Doesn't matter if you're a fan of hip-hop or Stoicism or not. I think these are all like universal messages. This is just like the language that I've chosen to inspire people with. I'm really proud of this podcast. It is season 2. If you haven't already, go check it out. Please do me a favor. Just, if you are not driving right now, go ahead, just search in your phone right now, The Street Stoic. It's a yellow cover. Subscribe to it. It would make me incredibly happy. I would really appreciate it. It's another project of mine that I'm just so passionate about. Want to make sure you guys know about it. I think that there's so much good information in it, and not to pat myself in the back too much, but I put a lot of work into it, and it's really good, short, practical advice. It's a great way to kind of start your morning. I love those kind of short podcasts like that, especially when I was commuting to work every day, where I can make it a part of my routine and listen to and get inspired and pumped up for the day ahead, and just to get my mind thinking a little bit. So that's what's for The Street Stoic. Again, if you're not driving, just do me a favor, search and subscribe to it right now. Just search it wherever you're listening to this podcast. It's a yellow cover that'll pop up. The Street Stoic. You make me incredibly happy. I appreciate you. Thank you in advance. If you are driving, make like a mental note here. And when you are pulled over safely, do the same, please. Now, with that said, on to today's show. We have a really dope guest. She is an incredible podcaster, creator, comedian, goes by the name Rachel La Loca. And I think I'm really excited to get back to the core of this show. And I don't mean like we've deviated so far from it, but I love when I get to revisit the basis of this show, the idea of living in your otherness, right? And Rachel is a perfect example of that. I'll allow her to kind of tell her story. I don't want to take anything away from it, but a lot of the conversation today is living in your otherness, and also, creating a life where you get to live within your passion and your purpose and do the important work to help your community, to uplift, and all those really amazing conversations, and finding your place within your culture, your community, and this world as a whole, which I think so many of us are struggling to do and are searching for, essentially, right? So really excited to bring you this conversation. So we're just going to get right into it. We'll do it in our Mi Gente segment. Mi Gente. My guest today is a comedian and host of the Latinos Out Loud podcast. She is known as Rachel La Loca. How you feeling?
Bien loca. It's a Monday de locura, but I feel great. Yes. Thank you for having me. This is so exciting.
Of course. Yeah, I'm really excited to have you on the show today, because I've been following your content for a minute, and I think you kind of fit exactly into what a lot of the basis of this podcast is, and it's also like the thing that I think so many people who listen to relate to, and it's this idea of otherness almost, but like otherness in your Latinness, and I love what you represent, and I kind of want to start there, because I find it really interesting. You're half Dominican, right?
Yep.
As well as you say, your dad is your typical Brooklyn Jewish man, correct?
Correct. Yeah. With lineage from Eastern Europe down the line.
Right. But you obviously exist in the Latin space, and very much, at least from the outside looking in, identify as a Latina, which you are. And I think for a lot of people who are mixed, which is kind of becoming far more of a norm within our community, within our culture, they struggle with that identity, right? Of who they are and how they sort of will sort of give themselves to the outside world. So let's kind of talk a bit about that, a bit about this journey in finding your authenticity, if you will, kind of in that otherness within our culture.
Yeah, you really said it so eloquently. There's this otherness, there is this like hyphen that I live in between. And I've faced this like dichotomy, this duality my whole life. But
Yeah.
I do find that like my mother being of the Dominican Republic and me spending summers in the DR. And by the way, BT dubs, my dad is a retired Spanish teacher. So growing up with the language coming from both
Yeah.
sides, like my dad with like textbook Spanish and my mom was like que
Sure.
loco, like Dominican Spanish.
Yeah.
I always grew up with this real appreciation for my culture. It goes beyond language. But there have
Right.
been times in my life where I most certainly don't feel like anyone, or like I feel like I'm stuck in the middle somewhere. It even stems back to like grade school and middle school, just being not being around a lot of Latinos and
Yeah.
kind of like feeling this responsibility of representing. Like, I'm not just white. Like, there's a
Yeah.
smorgasbord, there's a sancocho right here.
Right.
And, I modulate, you know what I'm saying? I don't code switch, but like there's this modulation too, like even in show business,
Sure.
going out there and auditioning for roles that aren't Latina is like, hold up, I think I'm too Latina looking for this
Right.
role.
Right.
Or on the other side of it, like just not looking the part enough. But I know I'm enough. I'm enough of both worlds. And I do feel like I've got the best of both of them. I represent hard body, and I've seen this like way of life for where there are voids. You know what I'm saying? ¿Tú me entiendes? Like
Yeah.
Latinos Out Loud was born because of a void in the space. And I do feel like Latinos, we're still underrepresented. We're still underserved. So I do feel like there's a void in that space that I need to like wave my Dominican flag real hard in. And I love answering these questions because it's like, what do you like identify as, or like, where do you land in the spectrum of Latinidad? And I go from 0 to 100. It depends.
Yeah.
But I'm ready to go 100 whenever need be.
Right. Well, I want to know kind of where that confidence comes from, right? Because you talk about, being very much aware of it, even as a young age, that you are kind of the outsider, right? To a degree, particularly not growing up around Latinos, but I'm sure even amongst our own community, people sort of trying to check you a little bit because you are, not 100% Latino, right? So I've spoken to, listeners of my podcast and gotten a lot of feedback from people, and a lot of people do struggle with sort of being able to own it, right? Where that confidence comes from. And I'm curious for you, did you have like a come to Jesus moment or something that really got you into this space where you're owning, this confidence of who you are and being unapologetic about it?
Yo, I'm gonna preface this answer real quick with like a jokey joke. Like, when I was little, my mother used to like blow dry my hair straight because my hair is super curly. But to kind of fit in with everyone else in my class, I had the big bangs, like a sheepdog. Like you couldn't even see my eyes. I have to do something like that in order to like, see the chalkboard and shit. And it wasn't until I started washing my hair by myself that I saw my hair started curling. I was like, oh my God, what's happening to my hair? And it's like that, that Latinidad showing through the curls of my hair and the volume of the curls in my hair. And it was those were one of the moments where I was just like, oh, I kind of like this about myself. And I'm going to showcase that. to other girls that also may be like relaxing their hair and hiding their curls and not being proud of the, di que pelo malo, which really is pelo bueno because I could go straight and curly. You know what I'm saying? Yep. There were those kind of moments. There was a moment in high school where like I started rolling with mad Latinas. I'm like, yo, I like the way this feels. I feel seen right now, And now like later in life in projects that I'm cultivating and working on, I really make an effort for that to shine because I feel like other little girls need to hear this and other Latinos that maybe aren't so proud of their Latinidad because maybe their surroundings don't, inflate that culture. I'm doing a lot of volunteer work at my son's school right now. And I'm really proud to say that I'm one of the chairs of the DEI committee. And, and that makes me really proud because I see the student body. And I'm like, yo, these students are diverse as, AF. But like, there's not enough programming to like have them celebrate their culture. Like there's a ton of educational program and the school is fantastic about doing all that stuff. But like now it's time to inject and infuse and celebrate culture as well. Yeah. So there have been like these moments throughout my life. I love your question. But like a come to Jesus, like a one single moment. Nah, dogs. Yeah. It's just like ever unfolding of moments that I continue to face because we're still kind of like, especially us Dominicans and son, you know what I'm saying? Like we're sort of still on the rise right now. So it's important to like preach and be confident about our culture. And I hope I'm doing a good job. I hope I'm like living up to this cause that I'm fighting for.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a lot of pressure, right? Because you feel that like even just existing, you're doing like it's not, you're not just merely living life. You in your existence and in your battle to be authentic, you're also fighting for other people, right? And it's a burden that we are welcoming on ourselves, but it is a heavy one to carry at the end of the day, right? To be unafraid to take up space and to be that oddball so that it hopefully cosigns for somebody else to feel comfortable in doing the same thing,
Absolutely. And there's other like platforms and stances, like aside from Latinidad and being proud to be this mixed breed, like other things that I'm also, as you could probably attest to, using my platforms to communicate, to convey, everything from like women's reproductive rights to like my infertility story and infertility awareness in our communities. And those are some of the things that I think we are also like underrepresented in or like underserved. There are certain topics, temas that are still considered taboo. And I'm like, why? ¿Por qué? Like, we need to talk about everything, yo. Like, we're a vocal people, like at large. Yeah. We're storytellers. But yet there's some of these stories that were sort of shushed or like shunned away from sharing, like miscarriage and infertility. Like I mentioned, like I did IVF, IUI, ay coño, ay mi madre. Like I did all the I's to try to get pregnant. And not a lot of women are talking about that. So I'm using my comedy for a cause in certain instances to like just communicate these messages more that I feel like are not being spoken about, especially in the Latino community. I'm like, what's up with that?
Yeah, well, we're like very private unnecessarily, right? It's like this, like, it's this sense of pride and this sense of we're always scared of what somebody else is going to say outside the house, right? So it's like you never want to, our parents are taught us from an early age to hide everything essentially, right?
Totally.
And I think that messaging as you get older, it is counterproductive to you healing. It's counterproductive to you getting the help that you actually need, even like a general medical sense, right? Like in the most, dire and normal of circumstances, like I'm having this issue, I should go get a doctor or do research or seek help on it. It's like, no, just pray it away. It'll be fine. Or here's some secret juice from some, person that's been blessed back on the island. Drink this. Don't tell anybody about it and you're going to be fine. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, how do we do this under the covers as much as possible,
Yo, Dramos, how did you even know that I definitely, okay, so I drank botella de embarazo, which is like this concoction from DR. It tasted like armpit. It was so nasty. If armpit were a juice, that's what I drank. Yeah. It had like floating souls in it and like herbs from the DR. But yo, not for nothing, te lo juro por mi madre. I got pregnant a month after drinking that shit, yo.
Right. My cousin's the same thing, by the way. So it's like one of those things where you're like, I don't know what to believe because like this shit sounds crazy, but at the same time, the proof is there. So I guess we're gonna roll with this old world stuff.
Yeah, yo. I mean, we still use Vicks Vapor Rub for everything. Like, I got my Agua Florida. Like, I still use all these things that like our ancestors, you know, and our elders have like taught us about. But porque sirven. Eso sirve. How did you know?
But there's so much like shit like that is interesting to me. Like even I can remember my mom waking me up one day out of a dead sleep and being like, "Come upstairs right now." And I was like, "Oh shit!" Like I'm in trouble for something. And it was literally her yelling at me because she talked to some like Latin spiritual advisor who told her that I was involved with the wrong crowd or something like that, right? So I'm getting yelled at because of what this dude is projecting. And like it's hilarious, but it's also like the irony that our parents were never taught how to just have a real conversation with their kids to check in about what's going on, right?
That's hilarious.
Instead, we go through all these weird routes and like believe these weird things just to do the most normal thing, which is just have a conversation with your kid if you're actually concerned with maybe who they're hanging out with or what they're doing these days.
My mother totally gave me the like, I had a bad dream about you, okay? And it was about your boyfriend, Junito. Do not lose your virginity to him, okay? It came to me in a dream. I'm like, really? Like,
of course, I have a cousin named Junito too, so this is hitting incredibly close to home. That's hilarious.
I love all Junitos. Shout out to all the juniors and Junitos in our culture.
but it's like ridiculous. You can't do anything but laugh about it. But it's also like a lesson in, okay, I kind of got to correct some of the fuckery because this is not a healthy way to live. I mean, especially with you as a parent now, I think like what are some of the things you have to unlearn from like that weren't taught to you or taught to you the wrong way about being a mother to a child?
I love your questioning. I just have to give you some flowers. Okay, because I do consider myself a cycle breaker. There are several cycles that I'm consciously like making efforts towards breaking. And shout out to my folks. I really have the best parents. I love them so, so much. But like, dude, I recently lost a ton of weight, okay? I was clocking in at 225 5 years ago. And I'm down to, gosh, should I say my weight? Women don't really do this. But I'm down to like a $141, 142-ish.
Oh, good for you.
Thank you.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm not even fishing for compliments, okay? But thank you. Okay.
No, that needs to be celebrated. That has to be celebrated. That's beautiful.
Thank you so much. Pero like the cycle that I needed to break were the portion sizes of food.
Yes.
And it wasn't just my mom and my dad. Like it was tias and tios and primas, abuela, great grandma. Like it was a sign of love to fill my plate with the plátano maduros, arroz con habichuela, you know, pastelón de arroz. Like, oh, you want seconds? Come here. I love you. No, wait, what? Right. So like I had to consciously say like, I'm going to cut my portions in half and see how my body reacts. And at first it was terrible. At first my stomach was like, you know, like really growling like ferociously at me. But then it was like mental. It was mind over matter. Like, wait a minute, stomach, we're content, or we should be content with like a fist, you know, size of protein and maybe some grains and ensalada. Like, eat the salad first. You know what I'm saying? And not the potato, not the purple potato salad that I freaking love with all the mayonnaise, pero like portion sizes. So that's like one of the cycles for my children that's really important for me to break, you know, because I led a healthy lifestyle, thank the Lord, but like I was overweight, you know, my whole life. So I guess not so healthy in terms of body size and shape. So I'm really trying to look out for that for my kids. We have diabetes in the family, as a lot of Latinos do. So like I'm also monitoring the sugar levels and the sweets that they eat. It's like not necessary to have Nesquik with every meal. You know what I'm saying? Well,
Right.
every time I would
Right.
go to my tia's house, like she would whip open the like then what was it like an aluminum or like a metal can with rust on the top.
Right.
Like save me the rust, please. Just the duck powder. But she would flip that top and make me the strawberry milk or the chocolate milk
Yeah.
because it came from a place of like her corazon. It came from a good place.
Right.
So that's something I'm really on the lookout for. I guess with my kids also like culture. Culture is really important for me, and I want them to be proud of their Jew mini Rican status. You know what I'm saying? They got
Yeah.
Rican, they got Dominican, they got Russian Jew, they got a little bit of
Yeah.
everything, and I want them to really absorb and be proud of that, you know? And the two of them look very different. I have café con leche. One of them salió with like my dad's green eyes, and he looks just like my father, like Eastern European descent. And the other one salió del Caribe, like completamente caribeño. And I just want them to understand that even though they look different, that we are all from this beautiful mishmash of cultures. And I want them to be proud of that. And I knew like growing up in a basically an all-white neighborhood, my parents were protecting me. It wasn't like we were shouting Latino. Like if we were, there could have some serious repercussions of that. Like, you know what I'm saying? But now I think we're in a more comfortable time where we are the majority. I mean, especially Dominicans here in New York. And it's something that we need to tell our children to be proud of, not to keep inside and only celebrate during Noche Buena with the family.
Right. And it's interesting, like the things that are done to protect us at times also ill-equip us from being true to ourselves, right? Because we're hiding parts of ourselves essentially to make other people comfortable. And I agree, I get it. Like we moved from the Bronx to the suburbs of Jersey when I was really young. So, we didn't carry like, Three Kings Day. We didn't do all these different traditions that my father grew up. We just did the Christmas, we did the traditional sort of American things, right? And I get why, we didn't go out of our way to do those things because my parents were scared of me getting ostracized by the kids around me in a white neighborhood, right? Of standing out and being made fun of and all those different things. And that comes obviously from a place of love. But then on the flip side of it, it also teaches you to change who you are to make others comfortable if you want to fit in, right? To not take up space, to do what everybody else is doing, right? To be a part of the mold rather than breaking the mold, essentially, right? And I think in general, school systems do that, to children in general. I have my own gripes with the school system. But I think, it's like things like this you have to unlearn as an adult because you recognize I'm not showing up as my true self. I'm dumbing myself down. I'm dulling parts of myself. I'm not shining as brightly as I could. And that is, I think, part of a thing we struggle with as Latinos with the idea of taking up space, right? It's the idea oftentimes, especially people who have immigrated here, it's like, don't be seen, don't be heard, just, be happy to be here type of thing, right? And now, as the newer generations, it's holding us back from really being able to have seats at the table. And as you said, we are the majority. We are, rising in having this spending power, right? But there's like this disconnect of us really living in our full potential, I feel like right now at this point. And we're at an interesting point in time in Latin culture in America specifically.
Yeah, true talk. And I also think there's this movement as well in media. Like, if we don't see us, if we don't see ourselves, like maybe we won't be as proud of ourselves as we could be.
True.
So I do like that movement, with the Latino, Latina, X, Y, Z, however you identify, like the writers and directors. We just had Chris Mercado on Latinos Out Loud this week. So it's hot and fresh. And he's a director and he just directed an amazing feature film, If You Were the Last, and it's on Peacock right now. And I'm not even trying to do his promo, but like he injected these Latinoisms into the film. It's not a Latino film. Like there's no Latino. There's one Latina actress and she's badass because she plays a governor. I'm like, yeah, baby. And that had a lot to do with him too. He's casting, he's helping with the casting, and he injected salsa into one of the dance scenes. And I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. We're on this road. We're making strides, and shows like yours, Latinos Out Loud, people like Chris Mercado, we just need to go double time, as we're doing to really make this impact, to have it have that like domino effect. It's our time, Papi. It's our time.
Well, I agree. And really it's because we've been brainwashed in the past of white stories are universal, everybody else is just niche, right? So that's sort of been the spectrum when it comes to entertainment, where a story that I can't relate to whatsoever about white people in Indiana is still going to get the, force fed down our throats in the movie theaters and on TV and all these things, because it's like, oh, this is universal for everybody. But because they might have a New York, a Spanish mom accent from New York or whatever it is, like all of a sudden now, nope, that just feeds a certain niche. The general America is not going to be able to relate to it. And that's sort of, I think, been the issue. But let's start diving into entertainment, because I know you speak about this a lot and talking about diversity and the importance of it. And we've kind of touched on it with people being able to be, feel like they could see themselves on the screen, which then, brings that confidence that we're all hoping for. But let's kind of dive into that a little bit about why this has sort of been such a major thing for you, and why it's sort of bigger than just like superficial surface level entertainment.
Yeah, true talk. I operate where there's voids. It's like it's a blessing and a curse, because like rather than riding a wave of like something is successful, no, this guy likes to be like, oh, there's a challenge, so I'm gonna do what I can to move the needle. It's like freedom fighter here, but it is important for me because I see that I have this, I guess, call it power, or just these platforms like Latinos Out Loud, like the Hilarious Show, which is my all-female variety show. We perform in off-Broadway theaters. We just did the People's Improv Theater Sketch Fest. Like, we're minority, I guess. We're majority Latina POC, but we're everybody, anyone who identifies as a female can be part of Hilarious. But I'm using my platforms because they were given to me. They've grown. I've been putting in the work. And even in like my writing, I feel like every day when I go to work, whether it's from home or my co-working space downtown, or it's at a meeting, or it's at a conference, or whatever it is, I need to do whatever I can in my capacity to move said needle. It's really important to me. I sleep well at night because, like you said, I'm not just going after the like, oh, I'm going to skim off the top and I'm going to operate in this superficial vacuum, or like, I don't get satisfaction from that. I get satisfaction from being fulfilled. And what I do to be fulfilled is do things for my community. I volunteer. I don't really shout that from the mountaintops because I volunteer for from my heart to do it for my community. But I've worked with organizations like the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. I've worked for the Violence Intervention Program, VIP, which is a domestic violence awareness program based in Spanish Harlem. And I really find that if I can move that needle, even like 0.5 of a degree, even like 2 points or whatever the measurement classification is, I did it. Yeah. Like, I know I'm doing it for my people whom are still the underdogs. Like, we still need leaders in this space, from the big leaders to like the micro influencers or whatever you want to call me. Like, if we're not out there leading the charge and talking about those topics and also just using our platforms for the greater good, then what the hell are we doing it for? What kind of fulfillment would you get if you operated in another, capacity? So it's important for me because I want us to really see ourselves. We're not there yet. I always ask this question when we have like directors and producers and writers come on Latinos Out Loud. I'm like, are we there yet? And the answer is always no. Like, we're not. Like, we over-index in the movie theaters, yet there's still such a small percentage of us on screen and behind the camera. That disconnect that you mentioned, like, it's still not mended. We still have a ton of work to do. So, like, I'm doing what I can, bro. I know you are too. And I do it because I want us to win. I feel like I can win when we as a collective win. And I also am working towards changing that mentality of like, the crabs in a barrel that we were also taught to like operate under, like, no, let's go. You got to get to the finish line. Who cares? No, you don't got to bring other Latinos with you. False. False. Right. We need to bring each other with us because there's so much room at the top for all of us. You spoke about these like niches that we're carving out. In the grand scheme of things, Latinos Out Loud, Hilarious, Rachel La Loca, I've carved out these like niches for myself with these brands that I'm operating under. But at the same time, it's for every Juan. You don't gotta be Latino to listen to Latinos Out Loud. Like, we talk to Lin-Manuel Miranda, we talk to the Kid Mero. Like, those guys are like general market and Latino market. So come to us for that. Don't come to us just because, oh, I'm Latino and I gotta check this out. No, papi. No, mami. Come to us because maybe you want to learn more about our culture, or like these prolific artists, these icons of the future that are shifting and shaping it. So again, I hope I'm giving these long-winded answers.
No, you're good.
Okay.
You're good.
But that's how I feel. Like, I feel like we have to keep working towards this, like, just sheer representation before I can really say, oh yeah, I'm operating with all the heavy hitters and we're doing this. Like, we have work to do. I have work to do.
Yeah. No, and I think, and everybody has a part to play, be it if you're just if you're a consumer, which is an important role, you are buying the movie ticket to support the Latin filmmaker or the actor, whatever it might be, or you're streaming the album, buying the concert tickets, whatever it might be. We all have a role to play. And to your point, it all matters, right? It's not about thinking that you have to be making these gigantic leaps forward on behalf of everybody. All these little sort of, pieces that we're carving away little by little will eventually add up to something. You know what I mean? Even in like something like music, you had somebody like Daddy Yankee who like was almost there breaking through the mainstream, but it didn't break through completely. But that opened the door for somebody like Bad Bunny to become the biggest artist in the world of any genre of music. You know what I'm saying? So like, everybody has a little role to play. We can all make that dent in it. And I think, a lot of the issue is still with who's at the top, who's in the power positions, right? Because, we'll see representation in front of the camera, or we'll see some directors, but who's cutting the checks at the end of the day, right? Those are the people that we need to be able to start getting into their positions of power, right? Because even in, I come from the world of radio, and, there are people obviously in front of the camera or who host the radio shows, people of color, but you still have to fight and convince the higher ups as to why certain things are important, because they just don't get it, right? And that's sort of the problem that happens, is that there has to be this fight just to sort of have some of the most simple things that would seem normal to anybody else, but because they're not of the culture, they're disconnected, they're of a different generation, they have a problem seeing it. And that's still part of the work that we have to do, is striving to get into those positions as well.
Totally. I peeped your last episode, and speaking of music, I really loved your topic on Bad Bunny and like the concert ticket price and everything. Yeah. Like, again, he probably also has to like fight for certain things. I remember there was a J-Lo. There was a J-Lo documentary that I saw at Tribeca Film Festival. I think it was 2 years ago. And she was talking about the fighting that she had to do when her and Shakira were performing halftime.
Right.
Fighting for seconds and minutes, fighting for like her Latinidad to showcase through her performance. Like, even J-Lo still fighting the fight, y'all. That shit is mind blowing to me.
Yeah. No, 100%. That's why, I think we have to also understand that when it comes to artists, and it's easy to get mad at them because they're the ones facing forward, essentially, right? But we have to recognize just how much work there is to be done, because the thing is, they have no problem putting somebody like J-Lo on the Super Bowl halftime show, but they want her to do it exactly as they want to do it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, so she's there almost as a pawn, and she has to fight to actually not be a pawn and have some sort of creative control in it. But while she's Jennifer Lopez and we all look at her, the Super Bowl is saying, yeah, but we're the Super Bowl. You know what I'm saying? And that still supersedes them. That still has the tradition of white America for generations upon generations that she's fighting up against, right? And I think that's what people sort of have to realize. And while it's amazing to be the artist, it's also, I think, even more important if you want to be the entrepreneur and you want to be the person behind the scenes signing the checks as well. Those are things we have to start, I think, showing examples of and trying to empower the younger generation to want to strive for as well.
Yeah, Dramos. This kind of reminds me too. So I had a corporate career in magazine publishing. Remember those things, magazines? You used to like turn the pages. Kids, go Google it. So I worked at brands like Latina magazine, People en Español magazine. And I remember as a marketer, like the biggest the hardest job, I should say, was convincing the executives at the brands, at the Fortune 500 companies, to even entertain advertising in our magazine. Because they were always like, oh, no, we're reaching you Latinos in the People magazine. And it's like, hold on a second. That you may be right that you're reaching some of us, but like, if we are so brand loyal, if you're not really speaking to us, we will not stick with you. We will not stay with you through the brand funnel towards that purchase that you want us to do. So it's really important to be in culture, not necessarily in language, but that was like the fight that we were fighting the majority of the time. The showcasing that, yes, Latinos over-index. Hey, Colgate, Latinos own 5 toothbrushes on average because the household is big, because it goes beyond the nuclear family. So you should advertise your new electronic toothbrush or like your Colgate Total toothpaste. I sound like Sábado Gigante right now. Patrocinado por Colgate. Colgate para tus sonrisas brillantes. But that was the argument in these boardrooms. It wasn't even so much about like the page rate. It was about, are you even talking to Latinos? I don't think so.
Yes. Right. But the irony here is these are people that are all about their money, and they're literally leaving money on the table. So it's like they're so ignorant to how diverse we are, how to speak to us, and all of these different things that they're literally leaving money on the table. And that's sort of the like crux, and I think a perfect sort of example of in general in this country is there's a lack of understanding. It's probably a lack of wanting to understand. But that's where these conversations are so important, because these people are just so clueless, even at the top of running these Fortune 500 companies like you talk about, you know? And that's why like these conversations are incredibly important to have, because if we don't, they're literally just going to keep as zombies doing the same shit, rinse and repeat over and over again, and we won't be heard.
Totally. I want to shout out Giselle from iHeart Mi Cultura.
Yes.
Who, you know, Giselle Bances, she's also a fighter for us, you know. I remember having countless conversations with her, like just her fighting at the top, like for funding and for programming and all this stuff. So she's doing a really stellar job. Just want to shout out iHeart Media for all they're doing for the representation of Latinos in the podcast space.
Of course. Yeah, no, she's amazing. The whole team over there. Right now, we're obviously, we're all kind of in the midst of our own personal fights as far as just getting things heard and doing what we want to do. And I think the beauty of it in sort of bringing it full circle to what we talk about our causes and why we do this is that hopefully the next generation or the one after doesn't have to fight this hard just to be heard at the end of the day, right? I think that's sort of the larger work that we're talking about.
It makes me a little emotional because like I do a lot. I mean, my life, my children are my life, you know, like I definitely prioritize myself when I have to, but like everything I do for them. And when they are proud of mommy, like the other day, I'll share a story that like gets me emotional, but I'll try to contain it. So we just won the Signal Award, the Bronze Signal Award for Best Comedy. And
I did see that. Congratulations.
Thank you. Again, not fishing for compliments. It's the preface to the story. Okay.
You guys, you deserve it. Go ahead.
Thank you, puppy. So I go to get the bronze trophy and I had to get babysitting for them because the cocktail party was last Monday night, a week ago. So they heard me talking about it. And like one of my son's friend's mother does makeup for TV. And so she's like, let me do your makeup. So I'm like, yeah. So River's mommy's doing my makeup. So they knew all the details leading up to. The next day, my little guy, my 5-year-old, comes home with arts and crafts with a picture he drew. And it's 3 stick figures. And I'm like, thanks for making mommy look so thin, first of all. 3 stick figures. And I'm like, Benjamin, who is this? Or tell me about this picture. And he's like, well, mommy, it's me, Donovan, my 8-year-old, and you. I'm like, what does mommy have in her hands? And my son was like, that's your trophy that you won for your podcast, right? I was like,
wow.
Because, you know, ay, me emociona. It just shows me that he understands, or maybe he doesn't understand, but he sees what mommy's doing. He sees how hard I work, you know, and this trophy, it doesn't tell me how nice I am, but like, it's a celebration, right? It's recognition. Yeah. And I just love that he sees what I'm doing. And maybe in a few years, he'll really understand that what I'm doing is for him to have a better life, for him to be super proud of being this mixed bred Latino, you know, and for him to not have to like hide that in any way. And my little guy, especially for him to be as funny as he wants, because he is the comedian of the two. I got one that's like in the books reading encyclopedias, and the other one that's reading knock-knock jokes. But I embrace both of them for what they are and who they are. But I wanted to share that story because it goes to what you were saying. Like, I am doing this for their betterment, for them to lead a little less stressful of a life as it pertains to their pride and not being so shy about it.
Yeah. And I think it also, though, them seeing you win at doing something that you love and speaking your truth, them seeing that shows them that they don't have to hide who they are in the future as well, right? I think one day being able to look back on that and saying, wow, I saw my mom get the recognition and win in general, right? Because that for me, growing up, as a creative, my parents weren't in this industry whatsoever, and they never knew anybody that made a career, A, doing something they love doing, but B, in the world of entertainment. So like they were full with, a lot of doubt. Their own self-doubt trickled down into me of thinking that this was an impossible thing, and I was throwing my life away, and I was, doing whatever it is, right? And now they've totally changed their perspective, obviously seeing it done. But I know for me, my journey would have been that much easier if I would have had, sort of proof of somebody I knew making it, doing something, being successful, or somebody being able to have that belief in themselves that then they can impose on their child of knowing that the impossible is in fact possible if you work hard enough, right? So I think it speaks to that, and that's huge right there.
That's a really good point. My mother, when she came here, she worked at a factory, surprise, surprise. It's not like she grew up saying, I love making shower curtains. I really want a career in the future sewing. I mean, she does love to sew. And, we come from a family of like seamstresses, but, it's true. And I took a strong pivot. I went to school for marketing and business. I minored in Latino studies. I had this corporate career of 16 years in the marketing space, which my parents were like, okay, she's tranquila. She may get laid off here and there from the media companies, but at least she's got this, tranquilidad about her career. We're not stressed. And then enter Rachel, 16 years into a career. Hey guys, I'm going from corporate to comedy. How do you feel about that?
Right.
I know. I
imagine.
I definitely raised their heart rates and stress levels for sure. Cause they were like, okay, comedy? What? Okay. Because it's not like there's a golden paved road like that I could just follow the yellow brick road to success in comedy. Hell to the no. As you know,
of course,
it takes work. Like Rihanna, I'm still outside also making strong pivots, like trying to figure out what can I do to make these businesses that I'm operating sustainable. I lose sleep on the daily on how to scale my businesses because I know there's the potential for it. I see the demand, but we going back to micro and macroeconomics undergrad. It's like, what is this supply and demand here that I can really capitalize on to scale this business enough to make it sustainable that my children can reap benefits for years to come.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at right now. It's hard. It's hard out here.
It's incredibly difficult, but at the same time, the fact that you are even in a mindset to think that it's possible is gigantic, right? Because there are so many people listening to this and obviously out there in the world that haven't even gotten started yet because they don't believe completely that it's possible, whatever the idea they have written in their notebook, right? And to me, that's the saddest thing because you've taken yourself out of the game before you've even given yourself the opportunity to succeed. You know what I mean? I think half of this battle of succeeding or finding your place is just having the confidence to go out there and try it, right? But there's so many people, because of their upbringing, because of their parents sort of ingraining in their mind, safe route, that they are too scared. And I get it. We've all been there before, but they are too scared to even get started. And that mental block keeps them in this perpetual place of having a lack of fulfillment, right? And that makes me incredibly sad when I think about that. When I think about there are people out there who are just sort of going through the motions of life and are not feeling regular joy because they don't get to live in the things that bring them happiness because they're held back by these beliefs that have been passed down to them by generation and generation. And it's, worse when it comes to immigrants and things like that, because of all the trauma that our parents and previous ancestors have carried around, that they just want safety more than anything else.
Yeah. I mean, Dramos, we all know the term burnout. Like, I was feeling it at the office, like back in the day. I was like, oh, this is what they're talking about. But that also stems from, like you just said, maybe doing things or like your profession is not what's giving you the most fulfillment, or you're really here just to like work for the man and get the paycheck and your 401k and security. But where does that take you in the long run?
Right.
And I started to feel that office burnout. Like, shout out to my coworkers, because the only thing that I would say like gave me some solace in the office was I was the office comedian. Like, mofos would like, yo, here's the deal. For some reason, my office was always at the printer, right? So like at Latina, at people in Español, like people would like let their presentations print out and then show up in my office and take a number like they at the deli counter and be like, okay, Rachel, make me laugh. Go. I'm like, yo, son, first of all, I also have a deck to pump out right now. I'm working on a PowerPoint, but okay, fine. You got me. Here's a joke I'm working on. And it was, that gave me like, there was an injection of glitter in that, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, it was hard out there. Like, I felt the burnout. Vacations helped, time off helped, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, I was dragging my feet showing up to the office, just feeling that lack of motivation in the morning. I can honestly say now, I mean, you're looking at my office, I do have a co-working space downtown. Shout out to Luminary, which is an all-female owned co-working space that I'm an American Express fellow and got a membership to. It's just it's so empowering. Oh my God, it's so inspiring. Like, I'm talking like decals on the mirror, like you're a bad bitch. Like, it's the best place to work from. But when I can't get out of, it's so amazing. We must meet up and I'll show you the space. But like,
please,
I'm here and I can't tell you, like, I wake up wanting to come to this little corner of my 1-bedroom apartment. I want to get on this mic. I want to get on this laptop. I want to talk to you, people like you. I want to build, like, it's different, right? It's just a different sense of like fulfillment. Did I take a pay cut? I sure did. Sure. But what I lack in that pay, or what I sacrifice in that pay cut, I gained in happiness, and just my spirits are so much higher these days.
Right. Well, I think, and that's, you recognize like, this is what it actually is meant to feel like to be living, right? Each day. It shouldn't feel like I'm, like you said, you're dragging your feet to get to the office. You're fantasizing about when you get off work, essentially, right? And not to say there aren't days where you're just kind of out of it and you don't necessarily want to do anything, even if it's something you love. I always say the greatest gift is the fact that more often than not, I am excited to get my day started, and that is a like mind-blowing change of lifestyle, coming from the norm is watching my dad bitch and moan, get outside the door, probably cursing up a storm while sitting an hour in traffic on the way home, on the way there, on the way back. Right, exactly. I watched that happen. I experienced it for a little while for myself, and like now, knowing this life, it's the greatest gift ever. And that's why I preach it to everybody, to at least try something, right? To give yourself the opportunity, because that's really living, is being excited for the day rather than waking up and just instantly being in a bad mood because you have to go sit somewhere that you have no interest in being at, That's not living. That's the one thing I want to push to anybody. It's like, that's not the way it's supposed to be. We're not designed in that way. And that's why so many people are unhappy in this life in general.
Yeah, Papa. I remember seeing my dad come home from school. He taught in a very hood school, in Greenpoint, before it was the Greenpoint of today.
Right.
And he would come home with like, after breaking up fights, he'd bring home like box cutters. And this is before metal detectors. And he was a dedicated teacher. I would often like miss school and go to school with him. I had schoolitis. My doctor would always tell my mom, I don't know, I just have this phobia of school. So he'd be like, well, you're going to learn anyway. So you're coming to school with me. So I'd go to school with him, and he was thoroughly respected by these kids. You know what I'm saying? Mr. Strauss, you're Mr. Strauss. But like, he would come home and pop 2 Excedrin, take an ice bag because he would come home with a headache from dealing with these kids all day. And I'm like, yo, that don't look fulfilling to me, bruh. But and he wanted me to be a teacher. He's like, why don't you become a teacher for the New York City, then Board of Ed? I'm like, I don't know, being in charge of like 30 lives for like all day. But actually, to pleasantly like report, I'm sure he's pleased to hear, I did take another teaching gig. I was teaching at Brooklyn College part-time. Back in the day, I was teaching marketing, but I just took on a gig. I'm starting in the spring of 2024, and I'll be teaching advanced radio and podcasting at CUNY Brooklyn College for undergrad.
Wow.
But only one section
huge.
at a time. Thank you, Dramos. Thank you, Papa. Like, but only one section. So I'm not like a full-on professor, you know what I'm saying? But
sure.
I'm happy to take this craft that you and I love so much and like instill real life experience and not so much the textbook stuff into these students, heads. I'm really excited to work with them. We're working hands-on in a podcast and radio lab. So it's not like, it'll be classroom hours and lab hours, but I'm going to be bringing guest speakers. Stay tuned because I'll be asking you to be one of them. Okay.
Let me know. I'm down.
Yes. You heard it first. I just got the verbal commitment. Well, because your radio experience, everything that you do is so relevant for this class. So I would love to have you come in and speak to the kids.
Of course.
Yeah. That's amazing. But it does give me that, like, that sense of pleasing my father, which is important to me too. Like, I don't think this is just a Latino, Latina, X, Y, Z thing, but I think like I really do find satisfaction in making my parents proud.
Sure.
And they see me shifting and like moving the needle. And, I'm saying, I think it's a bounce back thing, right? Like I see them proud and I'm like, I get proud. I'm like, okay, I'm going to continue on. This feels good.
But you're doing it your way, which is the important part, right? You're finding a way to have that balance of you're making yourself happy while also making them proud rather than it just feeding them being proud and you're miserable in the process, right? I think that's where a lot of people tend to find themselves in, where they're going the route that their parents wanted while ignoring completely what makes them happy, and they don't realize they can kind of have both. It's going to be a little bit more difficult, but you can find that balance somewhere between. So that's beautiful that you have that now, and those kids are very lucky. I love that class is exists, but also can be taught by somebody like you. I think it's a beautiful thing.
Thank you, Papa. I'm mad excited. I mean, like, again, this experience that I've garnered over the last 7 years of podcasting, I never knew it was going to lead me to some of the magical places that it's led me to. And I'm sure you can agree with this. We're on this like hamster wheel, like pumping out the shows, interviewing the guests, booking the guests, and it's like these moments where I get to like sort of jump off for a minute and look and be like, oh, yes, I'll do this voiceover acting gig. Oh, you heard my voice on Latinos Out Loud? Oh, yes, I guess I have refined this tool with my larynx and pharynx. Yeah, like I guess my breathing on the mic has improved over the last 7 years.
Right.
Giving space for like a co-host or a guest to speak and like not being afraid of silence. Like all these things. And like the teaching in the podcasting space, I never thought like I'm a marketing girl. Like I have my training in marketing and I brought that to the classroom. But now to bring this experience that I am so passionate about, that like I live and breathe every day. We, SiriusXM puts out a report on consumer behavior and podcasting. Yes, I'm reading the thing from start to finish. And now I get to repurpose that. Like I get to share that knowledge with students who have the same likeness and desires and, are so intrigued by this ever-changing wild, wild west of a space called podcasting. It's so cool. And we're on this as it's evolving. We're like riding the waves and learning at the same time, like as the executives are. We're all learning. It's like, there are, I guess, these, experts in this space, if you will. But it's not like there have been, like I said, all these textbooks written and all these documentaries on podcasting. There simply haven't been. It's such an, it's a growing field that is so exciting to be a part of, right?
Yeah. And it's it's still relatively new for the average person. And it's also because of the amount of freedom, it's ever evolving, and it's always going to be something different depending on who's at the helm, right? There's always going to be people who are figuring out different ways to market it, connect with audiences, to monetize it, whatever it might be. There are so many different things happening. That's the beauty of this, platform and more so this medium, I should say, is the flexibility it gives you to kind of do whatever the hell you want. And that's what's exciting about it, is that there's going to be somebody who revolutionizes it completely. That is, just now, like setting up a microphone, or in 5 years, going to be setting up a microphone and doing that. And that's what's amazing. I think it speaks in general also to the larger conversation we're talking about, is inspiring other people, trying to be that spark for others to chase after what they want, and to inspire them to take up space and be that voice and be authentic, which is beautiful. So I think you're right in line with that. So I love this for you. So good getting to connect with you as well. I feel like we could talk for another 4 hours, but so I think that's a good place. We can. We'll put a pin in it. We'll save that for another day. But where can people check out all that you're working on? Please push them to all the great stuff that you're currently doing.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Yes, please follow us at We Are Latinos Out Loud across the socials. We have a website, wearelatinosOutloud.com. You could also give us a call. No big whoop, 978 Latinos. Give me a call. And then follow me on my personal stuff at Rachel La Loca, Rachel La Loca, across all the socials. I won't give out my personal phone number, but if you call 978 Latinos, you will be connected to me. I'm really appreciative of this space. Thank you, Dramos. Thank you for doing Life as a Gringo. I certainly feel like a gringa from time to time. And I love your show. It's so great.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you hopping on here. We'll have to have you back again soon, hopefully.
I hope so. And then you have to come on Latinos Out Loud. Pod to pod love, baby.
Let's do it. You let me know. I'm there.
Yo, I also got to shout out real quick that I do have a live podcast at CUNY Brooklyn College on December 5th.
Oh.
Yeah, I should announce it because the Eventbrite went live this morning. Rachel's really going back to school. Like, not only am I going back to teach, but they're also welcoming me and celebrating this new expanded TV and radio lab in the basement of Whitehead Hall at CUNY Brooklyn College. So we're inviting guests on December 5th. Again, if you go to wearelatinosOutloud.com, you'll see it listed on the events page. And it's first come, first serve. There's not a lot of seats. I think we're looking for just 70 seats to be filled. So go to Eventbrite, search for Latinos Out Loud Live at Brooklyn College, or simply go to the website or my social and you'll see it promoted there. But it should be fun. We're doing 2 tapings. One taping is exclusive for the students for extra credit for their TV radio classes. And the second is for outside guests. And I have to say that I'm so proud that both tapings are being fully produced by the students of the TV and radio department.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's such a great experience. I love that. Yeah, definitely if you're in the New York area, go check that out. Man, you got a lot going on. So make sure we follow Rachel Loca on socials. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dramos. Thank you so much.
Man, big shout out to my guest this week, Rachel La Loca, for hopping on the show. Love that conversation. I'm energized by it. Her spirit is incredible. So always amazing to get to connect with people like that. We've been following each other on socials for a minute. This is the first time we got to connect. So really happy for her and all that she's doing, all that she's accomplished. I think just incredible, to have these voices that are diverse within our culture, within our community, and are doing the work and are purpose driven and all of the above. So really happy to have her on the show. Now, with that said, I want to get y'all's take on this conversation of otherness. I know we're running a little bit long, so I won't make it too crazy of an Ask a Gringo segment, but, we have the season finale coming up next Tuesday. So I want to try to, make sure we're ending on a high note with some of our core things being a part of the show, like Ask a Gringo. So we are going to get into that.
Ask a Gringo.
I have a question.
All right, so I know we haven't done Ask a Gringo properly in a minute, so I wanted to make sure I got one in here. We don't have a ton of time, so I'm going to read a couple messages, or a couple responses, I should say, to the question that I asked, right? And I simply asked on my Instagram, at DJ Dramos, where do you feel like an outsider? And I got a bunch of responses. I'm just going to read a couple here. The first one, I'm going to keep anonymous here just because I don't want nobody getting fired. But this person said, my job. And that's tough, right? And there's a twofold way to look at this, right? And without knowing what this person does for a living, I think, if you feel like an outsider to the point where you don't like the people you work with, you're uncomfortable with them, the environment brings out the worst in you, and you're not passionate necessarily about the work that you do or the company you work for, then I get it. I'm Mr. Quit your job and chase happiness, right? But on the flip side of it, a different conversation I'd like to explore is you being an outsider, which of course is going to be uncomfortable for any of us. None of us want to feel like we are the the redheaded stepchild, if you will. You being an outsider, though, also means that you could possibly be a vehicle for much needed change, right? And there's like a lot of different industries that we can kind of talk about, or even job titles, even something like a teacher, right? Like I talk about this all the time. And I'm just kind of going off on my own little rant now, but I think the school system, as we know it, is broken. It's not producing the best results, right? It's not set up to produce the best results. And I think somebody who thinks outside the box, who has maybe emotional maturity, or is not beyond just like emotional maturity, but is thinking about teaching kids in a real practical way and seeing their individuality, or teaching practical skills like emotional intelligence. That's what I was trying to get at. Like, and this is just an example, like to me, of things that should be standard in school but aren't. Like a teacher who is in that sort of place, in that sort of state of mind, would be very beneficial. Again, they'd be an outsider because they're kind of going against years of tradition, if you will, but they might have the greatest impact on children. It's like there's that movie, I think it's with John Leguizamo, where the he's in the hood and he's teaching these kids how to play chess, right? And like, obviously that is completely outside of the norm of what priorities would be in a high school situation, like a chess teacher. But it's the discipline that it teaches these kids. It's the way they use their mind. They enter these competitions. They do all these different things, right? And he's breaking up the monotony of everyday normal school life with something that is untraditional, and opening these kids' eyes to something completely different. I think that's where the teacher example is coming to my mind. I was just watching that movie the other day. Don't remember what it's called though. But yeah, I think, like anything, you can view it in one of two ways, right? There is the negative view of like, I hate this situation. Maybe that's true. Or you can also see the opportunity in it, right? I feel like an outsider. I feel like something is missing. I don't feel like I can be myself here. That also then becomes an opportunity to create what you've been hoping for, right? And that's also a perfect example that I'm overlooking blindly is this podcast. Remember, I was in radio before this, at some of the biggest shows and a part of the biggest brands that radio has to offer. But I didn't see myself in any of it completely. I didn't feel like I had a real voice in it. And I felt like an outsider oftentimes. And that then allowed me to view it as a opportunity, or I began to view it as an opportunity. That's what led to this podcast, right? The fact that I was an outsider, recognizing that I did have something valuable to bring to the table, allowed me to create something that wasn't there before, and really carve my name out in a way that I would have never been able to had I have just gone the comfortable route. So just food for thought on that little rambling that I'm giving you right now. Again, I don't know this person's situation, so I can't give you any real world advice, but I always am a big fan of how can we see this from every angle possible in order to make the best decision possible. So I guess that's my angle with this. And I'll read one more here. At @cross_soul says, in my culture, I'm working on feeling like I don't belong with the rest of my people. I'm getting there. And I get it. Obviously, again, that's the basis of this podcast, is feeling like an outsider within your own culture. And I'll be real with y'all. Like, I still feel that way sometimes. There might be times where I walk into a room and, I'm surrounded by, fellow Latinos, and the way they carry themselves is a bit differently than me, or maybe they're speaking Spanish back and forth to each other. And not that they're like keeping me out of the conversation or whatever it is, but there is, on my own end, I'm a little bit self-conscious of the fact that I can't communicate as quickly as them or in the same manner as comfortably, right? And there are times where I might feel lesser than, or my instinct is to feel lesser than. So I think those moments are still going to arise. I think it's just owning your authenticity and pushing past that uncomfortableness in knowing that you have a place here, right? I was on a podcast recently and they were asking me about like what authenticity is. And I just gave a really like sort of simple real world example. Like I like clothing, I like fashion, things like that. And I like to get creative with it, right? And sometimes being creative with it is a bit outside of the norm of what people in the middle of New Jersey where I live are wearing, right? Particularly where I have my studios in a small town. So if I run into a CVS around here or the local pizza shop or something like that, like I immediately stand out. At times I feel uncomfortable, or even, certain bar scenes and things like that, where it's, there aren't a lot of people who look like me or whatever it is. Like there's a standard of way of that people dress, and I am not a part of that. So I'm immediately going to stand out. And in the past, I've sort of dressed for the place that I'm going or the crowd that I'm going to be around. And I've made it a point as of late to say, nah, I'm not changing anything I do for anyone else, to make them feel comfortable. I'm going to stand in my own authenticity. And, be it if I look, I'm getting weird looks all night, and it's uncomfortable, cool. But at least I know I'm doing me. I'm doing what makes me happy. I'm dressing the way I want to. And again, it's a silly example, but I think there's a real world example of like, you have to just own a bit of that discomfort and know that it's part of this whole process. And I think what I've noticed is the more I challenge myself to do that, the less and less I feel uncomfortable, the less and less that the looks bother me, right? Or the less and less I'm even aware of the fact that I'm the one person, who's a weirdo there, quote unquote, So I think you just got to continue to own it and be confident in who you are and recognize that you have something to contribute. And at the same time, you belong there just as much as anybody else. Doesn't matter if you might feel different or grew up differently or don't have the same knowledge or skill set or speak the same language, whatever it might be. Like we all have a place there. There's nobody that can take that away from us, right? It's ingrained in us. It's in our blood. We're born into this community, right? As a result of our ancestors, and nobody can take that away. So that's my food for thought there. Thank y'all so much for participating in our Ask a Gringo segment at DJ Dramos on Instagram. Now, with that said, let's quickly tie everything we talked about today into a neat little bow in a segment called Conclusion Stew.
Time for conclusion stew.
All right, so I'm going to keep it real short because that was a longer conversation and an episode in general. But I think at the end of the day, man, we're all chasing happiness. That's what we should be chasing: fulfillment and happiness, and personal fulfillment and happiness, not stuff that is predicated on outside validation. And within that, you have to be okay to own your otherness. You got to be okay in walking in your authenticity and being misunderstood by people time after time. And I think also you have to be living with real purpose, right? Conscious living, that the decisions you make are for the greater good of yourself and your community, your culture, and the world at hand, right? I think those are sort of the keys to really finding genuine happiness and fulfillment in this life, and the type of happiness and fulfillment that is not fleeting, right? That is consistently there, that is sustainable, the type that feeds your soul. And I think that's what we're talking about with this conversation with Rachel La Loca. So big shout out to her for hopping on here, and even her talking about quitting her corporate job and taking a pay cut, but she's far happier because she's doing work that means something to her and that is contributing to the greater good. Like, I think anybody who's having financial problems, I'm sure it's hard to relate to the idea of choosing your happiness over a paycheck, right? And not to say that you should be choosing, your hobby or your passion over being able to provide for yourself and your family, but there can be a balance where you can make a living where you can have your needs met, and still be happy, right? And I think that's what we're talking about with those conversations where the idea is not necessarily making as much money as humanly possible by any means necessary. That doesn't provide real happiness, but it is finding a way to make money doing something you love. And even if it doesn't make you rich, as long as you're comfortable, that's going to be far more important than being a billionaire who hates what they do. I think that's the general conversation. And again, being able to be authentic and take up space as your true self will always make you far happier. than any sort of monetary compensation or outside validation. Like that's the type of stuff that really fills your heart, feeds your soul, is genuinely being able to wake up every day, authentically you, doing things that you love and enjoy doing. I think that's what we all should be striving for at the end of the day. So big shout out to Rachel Loca for helping bring this conversation to life. And man, 1 week away from the season 2 finale, which is crazy to say. Everybody have an amazing Halloween. If you are listening to this on the day of, go enjoy yourself. And I'll catch you on Thursday with a brand new episode. Again, my other podcast, The Street Stoic. Go check that out. Go subscribe, please. Go follow that, whatever it's called, on whatever platform you listen. I appreciate you. It's some daily inspiration. I love this podcast. I'm excited to be bringing it to you. I hope that you enjoy it as much as I like making it. So please go check that out, The Street Stoic. And that's it. I'll catch you on Thursday with Thursday Trends episode. So then, stay safe. Talk soon. Peace.